Hatching is a shading method using more or less parallel lines, meaning the lines all go in the same direction, like the lines on this pad. You can create darker values in 3 ways. Line proximity, meaning the distance between lines, is definitely the most important for this method. Number 2 is pencil pressure. The harder you press with a pencil, the darker the line. Pencil type also makes a difference. There are 2 letters of pencil, H and B. H pencils are lighter than B pencils. Along with the letter, it may have a number. Higher H numbers are the lightest ones, and higher B numbers are the darkest. These are the types of pencils you'll see the most. 3H is the lightest, 2H is less light, H is even lesser light, and so on down to B, which is pretty much right in the middle. Then we see that the numbers start to go up. Those are B pencils, so 2B is not quite as dark as 3B, which is not quite as dark as 4B, all the way to 6B, which is the darkest. Now for an example of hatching. I'm going to make a gradient, and a goal for a beginner is to make a hatched area that is even in tone without dark or light spots. For this, I'm not using the entire range of pencils. I'm using a 3H, which is the lightest, an HB, which is a little less light, more or less in the middle, a 2B, and lastly a 4B. That should be enough for what I'm trying to do here. For the lightest values, which in this video might be hard to see, but the second area here, this one's white, the second one is just a little bit darker. That's probably the most difficult. I'm using the lightest pencil, and I'm just making parallel lines, all going the same direction. It probably looks the best if you make your lines pretty evenly spaced and go all the way across your space here. If you were drawing a subject, it would be different, but just because we're doing a gradient, then you want to make it as even as possible. So even just a light pencil, 3H, with just a few lines would make this space here just a little bit darker than the white space. For the second space, I can make my pencil lines just a little bit closer together than the second space. If you see a dark spot Right here I see a little bit of a dark spot. You can continue to make lines around the dark spot while avoiding the dark spot itself. A good way to identify the dark areas, a dark spot for instance, is to allow your eyes to blur or go out of focus a little bit, or to squint. This takes away our attention to detail and allows us to see the values a little more clearly. For the fourth space here, I'm still going to use my lighter pencil with closer lines, and I'll see if I can get that same value that I see in the gradient above. If I can't match that value, then it's likely that I'll need to add some of the HB pencil on top of this one that I'm using right now and darken the lines. If I see an area that needs a line or needs to be a little bit darker, I can just carefully place lines in those areas only. As I said before, I mentioned that going all the way across with a line usually looks best, but if you need to just fill in certain spots, you can do that as well. If I make a mistake where I accidentally make a dark spot like this, then it's best to use an eraser. Take out that spot. And then replace the lines so that it's a little more even.